I trusted my wife with my life, my career, my secrets. She betrayed me in the cruelest way possible, setting me up to take the fall for a crime that could have put me behind bars. But she didn't know one thing: I know how to wait. And when her world started crumbling, I was right there watching. The first sign should have been the password changes. Looking back now, I can pinpoint the exact moment Lauren started pulling away. It was subtle at first, the kind of things you dismiss when you've been married for 8 years. The way she angled her phone screen away from me while texting. How she started scheduling more evening meetings than usual. The sudden interest in creating separate banking accounts for better financial organization. I was making partner at Henderson and Ross, one of Philadelphia's top law firms. The hours were brutal, but the trajectory was worth it. Lauren had her own real estate business, finding premium properties for high net worth clients. We were the perfect power couple, at least on paper. Our Christmas cards showed up on friends' refrigerators, her bright smile, my arm around her waist, standing in front of our restored Victorian in Society Hill. The kind of life that makes other people envious. Then came the morning that shattered everything. I was reviewing depositions in my corner office when 3 FBI agents walked in, flashing their badges like they were handing out business cards. The lead agent, a stern-faced woman with steel-rimmed glasses, held up a warrant. "Daniel Hunt. We need you to step away from your computer." I watched, stunned, as they systematically dismantled my professional life. They seized my laptop, external drives, even the backup USB I kept in my desk drawer. My colleagues peered through the glass walls, whispering among themselves. 20 years of building a reputation, evaporating in 20 minutes. The evidence they had was damning: wire transfers to shell companies, forged signatures on legal documents, a complex web of kickbacks tied to cases I'd handled. Everything pointed to me orchestrating a sophisticated fraud scheme worth millions. The kind of white-collar crime that makes headlines and ends careers. But I knew with absolute certainty that I hadn't done any of it. Lauren came to see me at the Federal Detention Center the next morning. She wore the navy blazer I'd given her for her birthday, her wedding ring catching the fluorescent light as she wrapped her manicured fingers around the visiting room phone. "I'm so sorry, Danny," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I wish I could help, but I can't be involved in this. My business, my clients. I have to protect myself." 24 hours later, my secretary forwarded me divorce papers. Lauren was asking for everything: the house, the investment accounts, even my grandmother's antique silverware. The timing wasn't just suspicious, it was calculated. That's when the pieces started falling into place. While out on bail, I did what lawyers do best: I dug. I called in favors, tracked paper trails, and pieced together the truth one document at a time. Lauren had been planning this for over a year with her business partner, Simon Marshall. They'd created an elaborate scheme to siphon money from my firm's client trust accounts, using my credentials and forged signatures. Every detail was engineered to frame me while they walked away with millions. They thought they'd crafted the perfect setup. A disgraced lawyer sent to prison, while they built a new life with stolen money. But they made one crucial mistake: they underestimated how patient I could be. I hired Mike Chen, a former NSA analyst turned private investigator. He was expensive, but his skills were worth every penny. We built our case methodically, gathering evidence of their offshore accounts, documenting their clandestine meetings, and tracking the money trail through a maze of shell companies. But I didn't turn it over to the FBI right away. No, that would have been too easy. I wanted Lauren and Simon to feel secure. To think they'd won. To build their perfect life on the foundation of my destroyed one. I watched from a distance as they moved in together, throwing lavish parties in their new Rittenhouse Square penthouse. I saw the society page photos of their wedding at the Franklin Institute, Lauren beaming in a designer gown that probably cost more than what they'd stolen from me. I tracked their property purchases, their vacation homes, their growing investment portfolio, all built with money that could have sent me to prison. The best part? They started getting sloppy. Success made them arrogant. Simon began bragging about their real estate empire at charity events. Lauren's social media was filled with photos of their extravagant lifestyle. They were practically documenting their own crime spree, one Instagram post at a time. I waited until they were about to close on their dream house, a $12 million estate in the main line with 10 acres and a private helipad. The kind of property that screamed, "We've made it." Lauren had already hired an interior designer and was planning a housewarming gala for Philadelphia's elite. That's when I had Mike deliver our carefully compiled evidence to the FBI. The same agent with the steel-rimmed glasses who had arrested me now had a new target. The timing was poetic. Lauren and Simon were literally signing the final mortgage documents when federal agents swarmed the title company's office. I made sure I was there to see it. Stood right outside as they led them away in handcuffs, their designer clothes clashing with the cold steel around their wrists. Lauren's eyes found mine in the crowd, and I saw the exact moment realization hit her. "You," she gasped. "All this time?" I smiled, the same way she had smiled at me through the detention center glass. "You taught me well, Lauren. Sometimes you have to play the long game." The federal prosecutor built an airtight case. Lauren got 8 years in federal prison. Simon, with his prior securities fraud charge from his hedge fund days, got 12. Their assets were seized, their real estate empire dismantled, their reputation in Philadelphia society destroyed. Me? I was fully exonerated. The firm not only gave me my job back but made me a full partner as compensation for the ordeal. The FBI's public apology made the front page of the Philadelphia Inquirer. I even kept the house in Society Hill. But sometimes, late at night, I stand at my window overlooking the city lights, and I wonder. Not about Lauren and Simon, they got exactly what they deserved. No, I wonder about myself. About how easily I slipped into the role of patient destroyer. About how much I enjoyed watching their world crumble, piece by carefully orchestrated piece. They say living well is the best revenge. But I discovered something different. The best revenge is making someone live with the same fear, the same helplessness, the same slow-motion destruction of everything they've built, that they once inflicted on you. And doing it so carefully, so precisely, that when they finally realize what's happening, all they can do is admire the perfection of their own downfall. Lauren has 6 more years left on her sentence. Sometimes I send her Christmas cards, me standing in front of our old house, arm around my new wife, living the life she tried to steal. I sign them the same way she signed those divorce papers, wishing you the best. After all, that's what civilized people do. The investigation files still sit in my home office. Sometimes I open them, not out of necessity but curiosity. Each document tells a story of their betrayal, emails between Lauren and Simon planning their future together, dating back 3 years before everything fell apart. Bank statements showing how they gradually built their parallel life with stolen money. Photos from Mike's surveillance, intimate dinners, secret meetings, stolen kisses in parking garages when they thought no one was watching. There's one photo I keep separate from the others. It's from our last vacation together in the Maldives, 6 months before the FBI showed up at my office. Lauren is laughing at something off camera, her hair catching the sunset, looking at me with what I thought was love. Now I know she was calculating, even then. That trip was paid for with money they'd already stolen from me. The hardest part wasn't discovering the affair, those happen every day. It was uncovering the depth of their deception. Every dinner where Lauren listened to my workday stories, she was gathering intelligence. Every time she brought me coffee in my home office, she was noting my password patterns. When she suggested I move my client files to a new cloud service for better security, she was creating a backdoor for their scheme. Simon, I learned, was a master of social engineering. Before he met Lauren, he'd run a similar scheme at his hedge fund in Boston. He'd avoided prosecution by turning evidence against his partners, a detail that somehow never made it into his professional biography. Lauren wasn't his first partner in crime, but she was definitely his most effective. They met at a charity gala, the kind of event where Philadelphia's elite congratulate themselves on their generosity. Lauren was there representing her real estate clients. Simon was scouting for his next opportunity. They bonded over champagne and cynicism, two predators recognizing each other in a room full of prey. I found their early text messages in the discovery files. They started as innocent flirtations, then evolved into detailed discussions of my work habits, my security practices, the ways they could exploit my trust. They spent months building their plan before ever laying a finger on my accounts. "Danny's too trusting," Lauren wrote in one message. "He still thinks everyone plays by the rules." Simon's response was telling, "That's why he'll never see it coming." What they didn't realize was that trust and stupidity aren't the same thing. I trusted Lauren because she'd earned it over 8 years of marriage. But once that trust was broken, once I saw behind the curtain, I became something they never expected, a man with nothing left to lose and all the time in the world to make things right. The FBI agent who arrested them, Sarah Martinez, later told me it was one of the most complete cases she'd ever seen. Mike and I hadn't just gathered evidence, we'd constructed a narrative that was impossible to defend against. Every document, every photo, every transaction told a piece of the story. Their own words convicted them. "You know what's interesting?" Martinez said during our final meeting. "They never once turned on each other. Even after we showed them everything we had, they stuck together. Maybe that's their version of love." She was right. Lauren and Simon remained united through the trial, through sentencing, through their appeals. They still write to each other in prison, according to my sources. Maybe they're planning their next scheme, or maybe they're just clinging to the one true thing in their web of lies, their commitment to destroying others for their own gain. I sold the silverware Lauren tried to claim in the divorce. My grandmother would have hated knowing it was touched by someone like her. The money went to a legal defense fund for victims of financial fraud. Every year, the fund helps people rebuild their lives after being betrayed by those they trusted. It's not exactly revenge, but it feels like justice. My new wife, Rebecca, knows the whole story. She was a prosecutor in the DA's office when we met, so she understands both the legal and emotional complexities of what happened. She's the one who suggested I keep the files, not to dwell on the past, but to remind myself of how far I've come. "Some people break when they're betrayed," she told me once. "Others rebuild themselves into something stronger." I think that's the real lesson in all of this. Lauren and Simon thought they could break me, use my trust against me, and walk away unscathed. Instead, they taught me how to be patient, how to plan, how to execute justice in a way that even they had to admire. They showed me that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't violence or money or even the law, it's the willingness to wait for exactly the right moment. The Christmas cards are Rebecca's idea, actually. "It's not about cruelty," she says. "It's about showing them that their actions didn't destroy you. That you're living your best life not despite them, but because you survived them." She's right, of course. Every time I sign one of those cards, I feel a little more free from the anger, the betrayal, the desire for revenge. Maybe that's the final victory, not just surviving their betrayal, but learning to thrive because of it. Lauren and Simon thought they wrote the ending to our story. They never realized they were just the beginning of a much longer tale, one about justice, patience, and the kind of strength that only comes from being broken and rebuilding yourself piece by piece. The view from my office window has changed since those days. The Philadelphia skyline still glitters at night, but I see it differently now. Each light represents a story, a life, a potential betrayal or redemption. Somewhere out there, other dramas are playing out, other trusted partners are plotting against each other, other victims are planning their response. I keep my office lights on late most nights. It's not about the work anymore, the firm practically runs itself these days. No, I leave the lights on as a reminder, a beacon for anyone else out there who's been betrayed, who's been told to accept their destruction quietly. The message is simple: wait. Watch. Plan. Justice comes to those who have the patience to orchestrate it perfectly. And sometimes, if you're very careful, very patient, you get to be there when it arrives.